are back, episode 126 of The Next Best Bet. It's on to the Sweet 16 for college basketball. We have some NBA shuffling going on right before the trade deadline. Interesting times to bet there. Some NHL, MLB's right around the corner. Who knows, maybe some UFC. But Brett, let's talk about last week real quick. What a weekend of March Madness to start it off.
Hell yeah, baby. Buddy Boeheim and the Cuse are cooking, Higgins. They are cooking with gas. We are going to the Sweet 16. Buddy's going to the top of the draft boards, Higgins. Number one overall over Cade Cunningham. It's just, everything's Cuse. It's an all Cuse world.
And since Syracuse is still alive, that means that we still have $1 bets from episode 124 still alive. So, although the Drake Wichita bet went in my favor from those episodes, so we got those bets wrapped up. Overall, in episode 125, I did pretty well, going 5-2, not including the win with my episode 124 bet.
Yeah, my episode 124, Syracuse is all that's left. I'm probably going to start fading that one out, Higgins, just to be honest, because like we discussed earlier, we're in it for $1 to win 150, so I basically have up to $150 to fade Cuse the rest of the way, and I think I might do that just to keep myself happy either way with the outcomes of these games going forward.
We'll get into what that Syracuse line is in a little bit, Brett. You did win your Levy lock. I won my pick of the pod, though, so I'm still one pick back on you on that. You're 10-11. I'm 9-12. Let's get into Beginner's Boulevard, though. The term of the day is game total bets. Now, this is a very basic term. You and I, we typically just call it the over-under, but it's the total amount of points that are scored in a given game, or the over-under that you would be betting on of the total points.
Yeah, exactly. And, total points scored. If you don't want to pick a side, this is a great way to still find yourself getting some action on a game. Maybe you think, oh, the Super Bowl is too close. I don't know who's going to win, but I think it's going to be high scoring. Well, you can bet that, Higgins.
Or your bracket is so busted that you don't know the right way from Sunday. So instead of betting on teams throughout this weekend in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eights, maybe you should bet on the over-unders and just root for some good competitive games, lots of scoring. Let's get into the March Madness, Brett. Let's talk about some brackets. Mine's busted. If you were in our March Madness bracket pool, you saw a name right above mine with the same last name. That was my sister, leading me by one win for most of the first round. But then the very first game of the second round, Illinois loses. Sister Jean and Loyola Chicago get the win over Illinois. And that knocks not only me, my sister, I believe my mom, and a few others that had Illinois. And it basically leaves Gonzaga pickers and one Villanova person in our pool. You got Gonzaga, though, along with a few others, right, Brett?
Yeah, one of our good buddies from college is leading the pool right now, and it looks like it's his to lose, especially since a lot of people are going to need Gonzaga to win, and he's going to have Gonzaga too, Higgins. So it might be tough for some of us to come back in this one.
There is one other dark horse, an Alabama pick.
Ooh, okay,
Down
so
low in the standings right now, but if Alabama gets hot, I mean, they played at a ridiculous pace against Maryland. It's hard to keep up with that type of pace. If Alabama gets some wins, makes it out instead of Michigan from that bracket, they could get some extra points and maybe be in contention in this bracket pool. We'll see.
yeah, I mean the way the Big Ten's playing, Higgins, I wouldn't be betting on any Big Ten teams.
Well, let's get into the games that are going on Saturday, Brett. And I had a real hard time narrowing down my podcast picks and what games I needed to wait on and see if the lines would tighten up a little bit by Saturday. I ended up on Villanova versus Baylor. I think Baylor -7 is too low of a spread right now. Villanova is still without Gillespie. The fact that the Wildcats made it out of the weekend is impressive. Jay Wright's a very talented coach. But Villanova being knocked down like that against a number one seed like Baylor, I expect the Bears to pull through, and 7 isn't too high for me for a team that did a very good job covering throughout much of the year.
No, I agree, Higgins. I think Baylor's just going to be a little bit too much for Villanova in this one, and Baylor's the better team. Villanova's a little injured. They're missing Gillespie. They're missing another player. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but it'll come back to me in a few days, and I'll be like, "Oh, that was the guy I was trying to think of when I was recording the podcast." Um, but to your point, Higgins, Mitchell and Butler in the Baylor backcourt are just two of the better players in the country. Period. And they're in the same backcourt in Baylor, so it's no disrespect to Villanova and Jay Wright. A healthy Villanova team could have given him a tough game, but losing your fifth year senior point guard's tough on any team.
But let's move on to the other game in that bracket. The game that everyone had this in their brackets because it was so obvious. Arkansas and Oral Roberts.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone knew that was going to be the game.
Absolutely. Never a doubt.
100%.
Never a doubt.
Uh,
So, Oral Roberts, do you think they're disrespected at being 11.5 point underdogs, or have they run their course?
no, I think that's fair. I mean, I think honestly it gives a lot of room for a backdoor cover. It's the second largest spread of the weekend. I'll be on the largest, but Oral Roberts can backdoor cover. Their backcourt's been very exciting. Ace Miss has been the story of the tournament for Oral Roberts, but I don't really have a particular lean in this one. I guess I would lean Arkansas, but not gonna bet it. 11 and a half is too big for me. Maybe if Oral Roberts, starts off the game up 6-2 and I can get that thing down to like 7 points, something like that, Higgins, maybe then I'll take Arkansas, but I don't really see myself betting this one.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point about being the second largest spread, so maybe the backdoor cover, maybe I'll find myself there. But I still just don't know enough about this team to confidently pick them against an SEC team when we've seen some success from SEC teams this year. Even though Oral Roberts did get that win against Florida, I'm not too confident on either side that I'm going to stay away from right now. Kind of like how I'm going to stay away from the Oregon State versus Loyola Chicago game, because I may find myself on this game on Saturday, but with the spread at 6.5, I expect that's going to close up a little bit as some Oregon State players maybe try to get onto a line because Pac-12 really did well in that first weekend. I believe they went 8-1 against the spread coming out of the opening weekend. So expect a lot of money to come onto the Pac-12 late, potentially, maybe even on Oregon State, who is the underdog, the larger seed. So I'm going to stay away from it right now, see if that line does close up. But a game I am going to find myself on, Brett, and I'm going to play a contrarian to you who said that you had some money to maybe work with betting against Cuse. I think Syracuse has this against Houston, so I'm taking them on the money line at plus 210 because not only did Buddy Boeheim look outstanding, Merrick Dolezaj does have to stay out of foul trouble, first off. Buddy Boeheim looked outstanding. Gerard shooting fantastic. The 2-3 zone, though, as we saw with San Diego State, a lot of these mid majors can't compete with the quality of that, and they don't shoot a lot of threes. It's hard to necessarily get inside and beat inside the zone. I don't think Houston's going to be able to do that, and Syracuse is going to get this win, and they're going to go on to an Elite Eight that they may be able to come out of.
Hey, I would love to see Syracuse win this game, Higgins. There's nothing I'm rooting more for than Syracuse to win this game. What I'll probably end up doing is taking a big chunk of that money that I have locked up potentially in some Syracuse future winnings and bet it on Houston just so I'm happy either way with the outcome. But I think Syracuse has a realistic shot. Like you said, Higgins, Buddy Boeheim is playing out of his mind. Dolage is playing well. Gerard's making some shots. Kendary Richmond's playing really well. So, yes, Houston's been really good and consistent all year long. Quentin Grimes has been great, but Syracuse is hot right now, and you don't want to play the hot team with the unique defense. I do want to touch on that Oregon State game really quickly, though, Higgins, before
Okay.
we hop into Sunday, because even though I'm not on it, I do think there kind of is a clear side here that the Bucks are telling you to take. The over under in this one is 125.5, Higgins. If you look at all the other spreads or over unders we've popped up, 141.5, 159, 140, 158, 143. This one is 20 points lower, Higgins, and the spread is still 6.5 points. That spread's way too big for that total. And I think Oregon State covers, but I think Loyola Chicago wins. So that's why I'm not betting Oregon State. But I mean, the lines are pointing that way. In order for the over to hit and for Loyola Chicago to win, they'd need to win pretty much 67-60.
Yeah, that would be a very difficult way to cover and barely hit the over at 67-60, actually, at 125 for the over under. I just find it very fortunate for the Beavers that they're playing on Saturday instead of Sunday, because when you have Sister Jean on your side, you definitely don't want to be playing on Sunday.
That's great.
Let's jump into Sunday, though, Brett, and talk about the largest spread of the day that you were talking about. Gonzaga minus 13.5. Is it too big?
Yeah, it's not my favorite, Higgins. I wish it was less points, but Gonzaga's gonna win this one. They're gonna, be up big on Creighton. With all due respect to Creighton, who's a very good team, one of the top teams in the Big East for sure. Uh, people were kind of low on them coming into the tournament. They surprised some teams getting out of surprised some people getting out of the first weekend, yeah, even as a 5 seed, but. Creighton's talented, but no one's as talented as Gonzaga, and I just think, a great coach plus a great team. I think this is a fair line to get Gonzaga at. 13.5 is pretty big, but I'm going to take it here. You can't be afraid of every big line, Higgins. You have to take some, and I think backing the Gonzaga team over the Arkansas team is the right move here for me.
See, I think if I'm going to be on that game, I'm going to stay away from the spread, but I might be cooking up some 2, 3 leg parlays that I could see Gonzaga at minus 1,000 being worth putting into, because most of the season we have seen Gonzaga at minus 30,000 on the money line. Impossible to really have any value in a parlay. Gonzaga at minus 1,000, still rough, but still might be worth adding into a parlay, I think. I'm going to find myself on a different game, though, Brett, between an ACC school and a Big Ten school. Florida State versus Michigan. And I'm going with the number 1 seed Wolverines here. I think they're going to make it to the end of their bracket. I don't know if they're going to win that Elite Eight game, but I think that they're going to win this against the Seminoles. And minus 2.5, I don't think that's too big for a conference that's being held on the back of the Wolverines right now. They went 18-8 against their own Big Ten teams against the spread. That's basically all they played in the regular season. They went 18-8 coming into this game. They're different than the rest of that Big Ten. It's not the fact that the rest of the Big Ten lost. Michigan's different. Michigan's built a little different. They're going to win this game minus 2.5 against the Seminoles. I mean, expect it to be high scoring, though. This over-under at 143.5. I could see myself even taking that over, because this sounds like a barn burner.
Yeah, the real question I have is how much of this is you just want Syracuse to be the last ACC team? I mean, like 100%, 99%,
I don't
100.
really care about that. I just don't think that Florida State's going to win this game. I
No,
wasn't even
that's
really
fair.
factoring that in, to be honest.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, Leonard Hamilton has had some tough goes in the tournament, but um, he's been a really successful coach at Florida State for, nearly 20 years. So Him and the Florida State team, they're typically long athletes going up against Juwan Howard's Michigan team. The Isaiah Livers injury is kind of what's got me off of this game because otherwise I'd be leaning Michigan with you, Higgins. But Livers is a big, part of what Michigan does, and missing him could be it could not mean very much. Other guys could step up, or it could mean a lot, and they won't be able to fill his shoes. And I'm just not sure how that's going to affect the game.
It'll be very interesting to see, that's for sure. The other half of that bracket with the UCLA Alabama game, I did have this in one of my brackets that I filled out. I had a few different alterations. One of them I had UCLA making it to their Sweet 16, actually. Alabama, I think, is going to run away with this. I'm not going to find myself on this game yet. This is probably going to be a day of pick for me, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm kind of leaning UCLA in the points here. I don't really know why, and it's kind of one of those I hate it, so I love it kind of picks. But yeah, I think UCLA is one of those teams that played well early in the season. Was really disappointing heading into the Pac-12 tournament. Really stumbling in. And clearly, they found their groove in that Michigan State game, somewhere in that comeback, because they've looked really good since then. Mick Cronin's now in year 2 or 3 there, so he's got some of his guys in the rotation and playing big minutes. So I think this UCLA team might be onto something here a little bit, turning a corner maybe.
Can they keep up with Alabama, though? I mean, Roll Tide, the Crimson Tide, 96 points against Maryland in a college basketball game. That's a lot of transition points. That is very, very fast offense and defense. Get the respirators out, get the oxygen tanks out, in a sense. I don't know if UCLA can keep up with that. I mean, they do average 73 points a game, but is their defense good enough to keep up with that?
I mean, Alabama's very talented. Higgins. They got Quinterly. They've got Herb Jones. They have John Petty. They've got Shackleford. These are all guys that were highly thought of players coming out of high school, and they've matured over time at Alabama, and obviously Quinterly transferred in from Villanova, but um, Nate Oates has this team playing really well. I don't think anything I'm saying is a knock against Bama. It's more so just kind of believing in Mick Cronin and his program a little bit, and also maybe buying a little bit of the Pac-12 juju going on right now because they've got 4 teams in the Sweet 16. Higgins.
I get that. I get that. Speaking of the Pac-12 juju, I mean, like I said earlier, they went 8-1 against the spread in the opening weekend, so not a bad pick to take UCLA plus 6.5. But what do you do when it's Pac-12 versus Pac-12? When you have Oregon versus USC? I mean, Pac-12's gonna win, but Pac-12's also gonna lose.
Exactly. I don't know what you do here. I guess you I guess you revert to other strategies other than the hot conference strategy, but I guess I'll give you my lean first, Higgins. I would always lean with the best player on the court. In that case, it's probably Evan Mobley in this one. So I guess I would lean USC minus 2.5, but just like the UCLA Bama game, I'm staying off of these. I don't really have a great feel for these games. I'm going to enjoy watching them. But as my bracket would suggest, I have no idea what the hell is happening in college basketball this year.
Well, we do have some data to look at for this game because since it was mainly just conference basketball games, USC, Oregon, they obviously played. One of their games were postponed slash canceled. I guess it was postponed because they're replaying it in March Madness now. But the only time they did meet up was USC to win 72 to 58. That was at USC though, so neutral site. Who knows? I'll probably find myself on the over of this game, is what I'm thinking, depending on if it stays where it's at right now. I'm not going to pick it right now, but that's where I'm leaning because both of these teams average 75 points per game. Oregon allows 80 points per game.
Yeah.
So 139 seems a little bit low to me.
Yeah, I mean, Dana Altman and Andy Enfield know how to put up points and get their offenses to put up points. So I think that's a fair take, Higgins. Actually, I wasn't even really thinking too much about the over under, but that's might be my favorite bet of this
You know
game.
what? You know what? Audible. I'm taking it. I'm
Taking
taking
it,
it right
took
now.
it,
Live
gone.
bet Jake on the
Live
over.
bet on the
Jake
pod.
on the over. I just did that research live. We're doing it. We're
We're
doing it.
doing it. Doing it. I like that bet, Higgins. I was going to say that might be my favorite one for this game. So, good take there. But let's talk more about our team because
Yes.
we haven't spoken enough about Syracuse on this podcast. We need to talk more about how great Buddy and Jim Boeheim are. Moneyline Magic. Can you believe it? Syracuse survives against West Virginia. I've got my dancing shoes. They're still on, Higgins.
There's a synonym to money line magic, and it's cardiac cues. This team is known to. They can't win easily. They had a lead late in the second half of 11 with 2:23 to go, and they let West Virginia make this so much more interesting than it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Matthews and McNeil and McBride, those are great
Oh,
players for West
McNeil's
Virginia.
threes.
Yeah, exactly. Those are great players for West Virginia. So you're not gonna be able to keep those guys down all game. Eventually, they're gonna get hot. They did in the second half. They went on a run. They actually took the lead back, but Cuse was able to keep fighting Higgins, and that's something that we haven't seen from this team throughout the year. Usually, like when things start going bad, all four wheels have come off. But in this game, we were able to keep the three wheels on and keep the ship rolling.
Yes, it was a fantastic game, a stressful game. I expect a very stressful game or a disappointing game. It's going to be one or the other. Syracuse doesn't blow teams out typically. It's always interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's what made San Diego State's win so surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy too, Higgins. Syracuse has been in the zone for 40 years, and somehow every, first game in March, that team in the first half comes out ice cold against the zone. And it's like, you know, we could watch the film from, 1996, 97, all the way to now, and not much is going to change except the players and the uniforms. But somehow every March, that first game, that first half, that opposing team comes out cold against the zone.
Now, Syracuse, Houston, it'll be very interesting. 75-72. They hung on. West Virginia had a thriller in their opening round, too. So the fact that Syracuse was able to hang on because that they have a very talented team, like you say, was just as impressive. But Syracuse is going to need Buddy Boeheim to show up again. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The man has just been on fire, Higgins. It's going to be really odd when Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham and all these five stars, Jalen Green, who went to the G League, they're all looking up at a coach's son from Syracuse, New York, going number one overall.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co, and be sure to add our podcast in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. Brett, let's move on to the NBA, where I want to talk about a back-to-back where the New York Knicks looked like something worth talking about. This season has been different, a little bit better than expected for Knicks fans, and the beginning of a back-to-back against Washington Wizards, the Knicks come out and win 131 to 113 behind a dominant performance by Julius Randle, but really everyone got in on the party and had a great night. I expect they're going to carry that into another game against the Wizards because the Wizards have not been very strong recently. They're only 1-4 in their last 5 games. They're lost two straight. So Knicks -2.5 or -3.5, excuse me. I'm going to take it because it really doesn't seem like too big of a spread after just winning by 18.
Yeah, fair enough, Higgins. I mean, if you look at these two teams, they're both carried by their, all stars, Bradley Beal and Julius Randle. Obviously, Russell Westbrook and RJ Barrett are the second engines on these squads. And then it's like, we'll see what we get from the rest. So, pretty even matchups. The Knicks have played better offensively and defensively. So, why not favor the team that's been able to put it together on more nights than the other team?
And both times these two teams have faced off, it resulted in the Knicks winning by 18. So maybe throw something in at a margin. Maybe throw in a little half unit, quarter unit in on a margin bet like that. I mean, both wins by 18. Small sample size of only 2 games, obviously, but still.
Right. Yeah, no, that would be interesting to keep your eye on for sure. Maybe just alternate spread and take the Knicks as like, 8-point favorites instead of 3 if you want to get crazy, but I'd just be happy taking the Knicks at -3.5, -105 like you got them, Higgins. I'd be cool with that and
I agree.
and
I
call it
agree.
a
I'm
night.
staying with what I got. I already called one audible in this podcast. I'm not calling two.
There you go. That's a good call. But I'm also on an NBA game on Thursday night, Higgins. The Sixers Lakers should have been a big game. Unfortunately, no Embiid, no LeBron, no AD. Philadelphia -4.5 on the road. Actually, a little extra juice on the -4.5, Higgins. I got him at -115, it looks like. So that's a little tough to eat, but I think Philly's going to win this game. LA is going to go through a little bit of a tough stretch here with no LeBron and no AD on the court. Um, I also think they might make a trade on Thursday, so that could affect their roster that is available Thursday night as well. Philly might make a trade, but it's not going to be Tobias Harris. It's not going to be Ben Simmons. So as long as those guys are on the court, I feel okay about that -4.5.
Yeah, both of these teams have been in the rumor mill as potential contenders for Kyle Lowry. Is that the destination for him? I'm not sure. Lakers may take on a player like Kyle Lowry, though, considering LeBron's injury and everything. They might want that little bit of extra spark. Not a bad pick at the -4.5. I decided to stay away from that game, though, because the injuries are a little too much for me to deal with.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Kyle Lowry's gonna end up. The player I think is going to go to LA, whether it be via trade or, he's waived by Cleveland and then eventually signs with the Lakers, is Andre Drummond. I think that's a guy that will really complete the Lakers' three-headed monster. Just adding a 2010 guy next to a 2010 guy next to LeBron James is pretty formidable front court there in LA if that were to happen. So Andre Drummond's the guy I'm looking to end up with the Lakers, but Kyle Lowry could. I think the team that would probably benefit most from Kyle Lowry would be the Clippers. Do they have the assets to get Kyle Lowry? I'm unsure, but they would be the one that could use a veteran point guard like him.
LeBron, AD, and AD squared? Is that what that would be, actually?
I don't know if anyone
Try
ever
getting a
called him
rebound
that.
against those three.
Yeah, that would be
That's
a
one way
tough.
to fight a Nets trio in a potential NBA final, I guess, is okay, KD, James Harden, Kyrie, you guys shoot all you want, but you're not getting any second chances. We're just collecting all the rebounds. We're also
Yeah,
getting all of our second chances.
yeah, it would be interesting to watch for sure. Obviously the Nets would try and make it as difficult as possible for Drummond to be on the floor, maybe play KD at the 5. But if Drummond is dominating on the other end, it's tough to take him out. So we'll see what happens. The trade deadline is going to be a lot of fun to watch on Thursday.
Absolutely will. Lots of action, lots of action. Speaking of action, though, Brett, as we go into the NHL, there's some action between you and I, between our personal NHL teams, that we're going to duke it out a little bit. And the last time these two teams played, the Rangers won 9-0. So the Flyers are coming in with a little bit of an edge, Brett. I think we got you this time.
Hey, 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 let's go Rangers. Yeah, I'm excited. Igor comes back on Thursday night, Higgins, so
Yes, he
hopefully
does.
that gives us a little bit of a bump. I don't know. I don't really have very much confidence, but we're taking on your team. I gotta back my team.
Absolutely. Interesting note about the Flyers this year, they are 22-9 on hitting their overs. So
So should I go over 6 at plus 100? Is that the bet?
I stayed away because the Rangers aren't spectacular on hitting their overs, so that might be the dud.
That
But
might
then
be
again,
the
the last
dud.
time the Rangers played the Flyers, they scored 9 goals.
Yeah,
So,
so who knows?
but speaking of other games in the NHL, Brett, I am going to be on the puck line of a game that if you follow us on social media, I was on the puck line of the opposite side on Wednesday night. The Wild will be hosting St. Louis on a back-to-back game for them. They played the Anaheim Ducks, got a win 3-2 on Wednesday. They're going to play the Blues on Thursday. I took the Ducks plus 1.5 because on the road they're very good against the puck line. Well, at home against the puck line, the Wild are actually 9-6. They're not bad. It's just the Ducks were that fantastic. The Blues, however, are the worst team in the NHL against the spread. So home, away, it doesn't matter. They're 8-24 against the spread. So give me the Wild minus 1.5 at plus 190. They didn't get the empty netter in a 1-goal game on Wednesday night. I think that they will get it on Thursday night if that's an option, if not winning by more.
Fair enough, Higgins. I like it. And the last game of the night that I'm going to be on, Leafs versus Senators. I'm not picking a side in this one, Higgins. I'm taking the over 6.5 goals at minus 110. It's really simple logic here. These teams played not too long ago, 3 straight games, and they went over this number twice and under once. So these teams scored 11 goals, 3 goals, and 10 goals in their games. So they've scored a lot of goals between the two of them, and I'm thinking over 6.5. Even though it's a big number, they've gone over that number twice, Higgins.
And the Senators have been playing better recently. They won 3-1. They were off to a rough stretch to start. They were a great team to bet against to start, but their offense has picked it up a little bit. And you're right, Toronto's offense has been spectacular. Austin Matthews basically scores almost every single night, it seems. So you get a goal from him, maybe a few others, plus the Senators over 6.5. I like it. Plus the logic you said of the last 3 times they played. Brett, before we do get out of here and even give our Levy Lock a pick of the pod, let's talk about the MLB because that is right around the corner. I mean, I have 2 fantasy baseball drafts this weekend. I know you had one a little earlier. Are there any others or any pointers that you should have going into this game, or what's your philosophy for fantasy this season?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get one more draft, and maybe I'll work something out where I can do that. But if not, I'm in a pretty competitive league, so that should be a lot of fun, Higgins. But yeah, I guess obviously picking earlier, you wish you would have made some slightly different picks. Like for instance, I take Zach Gallen over Blake Snell, and now Gallen's got the forearm fracture. So just make sure you're up to date on injuries. There was nothing I could have done about that, but now that things have happened, just make sure you're up to date on all your injuries. Know everything you're doing before you select a guy, because you would not want to be in a situation not knowing that Fernando Tatis walked off the field the other day with some shoulder soreness for the Padres, and you're like, oh, I wonder why the guy didn't pick him at number 2.
That is absolutely a very good points. I was going to say even the basics of being on the West Coast with a bunch of East Coast people. Double check the times of your drafts. Make sure you know what in time in your time zone the draft starts because you don't want to get auto drafted. All your research that Brett's talking about goes right out the window if you don't show up at the right time. So make sure you know what time your draft is. That's the basics.
Higgins, I hope they know what time the draft is, but that is definitely good, Higgins. Make sure you have that in your calendar. You got two this week.
Well, the MLB season starts next Thursday, April 1st. It's not an April Fool's joke. It really starts on April 1st on Thursday. It'll be very interesting to see. Brett, you even commented to me, they finally did it right, it looks like, right? Heading into a weekend, it looks beautiful. I think they're doing it right.
Yeah, I think they got all the games starting on the same day. No one's in, you know, not that other countries shouldn't get baseball games, but no one's starting in Tokyo a week before the rest of the teams to then fly back to the States to then, get back on the normal time zones and then start the season a week later.
That definitely is a detriment to the start of your season if you already have to have that extreme international travel, I would agree. Let's get into our Levy locks and pick of the pods, though, Brett. It's going to be an NBA themed pick this week, though, isn't it?
I guess so, Higgins, and we're gonna stay in the Atlantic Division even more specifically. But I really like the Lakers heading to Los Angeles on Thursday night. They're 4.5 point favorites. I think obviously the trade deadline could have an impact on some of these rosters, but Philadelphia stars are not going to be traded, and the Lakers stars are currently out. So even though there's no Embiid for the Sixers, no AD for the Lakers, no LeBron for the Lakers, advantage Philly in my mind.
Well, I'm going to go with an Atlantic Division game that's actually going to be on the East Coast for this one because that one's in Los Angeles, if I believe. I'm going to go with the Washington Wizards versus the New York Knicks. The Knicks have won both of their games against the Wizards this season by 18 points, including on Tuesday night in a game that basically every Knick went off at 131 to 113 spectacle. It was beautiful. Julius Randle, 37 points, played spectacularly. Knicks minus 3.5 seems way too low for me. I think the Knicks are going to do it again. I think they're going to cover that 3.5 points easy. And maybe if you follow us on social media, you might see me sprinkle something else on that game that I mentioned while we were talking about that game a little bit earlier. You see our socials above us if you're watching us. If you're listening to us, that is at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page. This has been episode 126 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again after the weekend.